Hello everyone, welcome back to Hyperbole. I know it's Hyperbole, but Hyperbole makes it mine. I just got of two movies. First up is going to be Warcraft. Now, heard a lot of bad things about Warcraft. From everything from if you're a fan of the universe, you will not like the movie, or if you are a fan, like, it's weird. It's made for fans, but fans will hate it the most. And if you don't know the stuff, you won't benefit, all that kind of stuff. I know basic Warcraft. I played the very first game. That's it. I played a little bit of World of Warcraft, and that's about it. But this is the lore stuff. From what the best comparison to say is, even though Lord of the Rings is what it is, then they made Hobbit there. It's like they made the Silmarillion and just embellished everything. At the same time, I had no problem with it. I thought it was actually pretty damn good. Duncan Jones did a great job with his filmicness of it. I know this might sound like I'm kind of bashing the movie in some ways, but this movie was very, very well made. Very competent. And yet, at the same time, I had no problem with the characters. Yeah, some of the stuff was stock. Like, you're always like, that's a bad guy. But, I mean, when a movie... Not every movie has to surprise you with that. Right? Let's be honest. It is refreshing when it isn't, but sometimes you go paint by the numbers, but you do it well, you're still okay. This one... Really, there's certain aspects of it where, yeah, I'm avoiding spoilers per usual. There's aspects where it's like, all right, get on with it. It's funny because some of the more human moments are with the orcs, and some of the more ruthless things are with the humans, and that's by design. I know that's part of the lore of whatever is going on. The look of the movie, though, is awesome. The visual effects on the orcs, my God. Like, remember when Gollum looked good? That's how good this is. Holy crap. The orcs are amazing. The CGI, the trailers don't do it justice for how good that is. And the battle scenes are so good. The fighting is amazing in this. And it's a fantasy movie and excuse me, it embraces it. Because like there's a flying griffin and there's a knight on that. And that, yeah, just because. They don't shy away from stuff. It's glorious in that sense. The actors, another complaint I've heard, and we literally talked about this yesterday at gaming, is that if you don't know the characters' names when you walk out of there, you don't remember them, it's not a good movie. You don't remember the characters. And my argument against that was, I might not remember what the mob boss's name or the son that killed the dog was from John Wick, but I know there was the mob boss guy and the son, and right, okay. There was the bodyguard guy that was played by Daniel Bernhardt. I got that, but I don't remember the names. We got them, but I don't remember them. Of course, I remember John Wick. And the argument against that was, well, it's been 2 years. When they're weird names, it makes it that much harder. I know coming out of Star Wars, usually you're like, who was that guy? The big green one? Yeah, that, whatever. Like, that kind of stuff is what you end up with until you're like, what was that name? Okay, got it. Weird names are hard for that. I remember sitting there trying to figure out what the lead dude's name is. He's the lead knight guy. Lothar. See, but at the same time, I'm like, that's not a normal name. That's not something that sticks with you, like Luke, right? Or something, I mean, for me, Vader. Well, I know a wrestler named Vader, or whatever. There's no tangible thing there to grasp onto with it. So I had issues with that. I never knew what Duradar's friend was, but he was the friend, the rival chief who was his buddy and had a hammer. Turns out his name is Doomhammer. But I never caught his name. Now, is that a failure of the movie? No, it's a failure on me for not remembering it. Okay, there is that. But when the movie hammers it in, like, oh, keep saying the name over and over, that's not good. This movie was natural with it, where they would bring up the name. They would talk about King Lane, or Aureus, as part of the thing, for Lothar, and stuff like that. It was natural with that. Garona, excuse me, is the orc woman, and all this stuff was natural. It felt fine. And I really am have a problem with not remembering the name. And like another friend said, just because you don't remember the name doesn't mean you don't remember the character. If the character was successful, you don't have to know what his name is. And to his point, he said some don't ever have the name given, or whatever. Like, that's just inconsequential. Most people, when they come out of a movie, they're not like, oh man, character X was great. They're like, nah, Tom Cruise was, because that's the connection. You know, the lead knight was awesome. That orc dude was cool. His buddy was neat too. That's just it. So that's just a thing to address. At the same time, yeah, you should be able to remember the names. I get that, but I'm not going to fail the movie on that. A big thing with this is that lead knight, and he's great. He's awesome. He embraces a quality in this movie that I think is really great, in that he goes out there and is just him. And I had never heard of this actor before. I looked him up afterwards. He very much reminded me of the lead guy from Pacific Rim, Raleigh. Charlie Hunnam, I believe. Sons of Anarchy. Very much a guy like, I've never seen this guy before, but all right. He's got me invested. He's got me interested. And there's a point when he like takes an orc down and like it gets back up. He says, and keeps going. And he's very much, very Kirk-like. And there's a romance in it. He's very Kirk-like. People say it came out of nowhere. Well, yeah, it did. He's like Kirk. He's like, all right. Yeah, sure. It didn't seem out of place considering how he was. It did seem out of place when she reciprocated. I was like, I don't get this one. That didn't quite work as well, but it is what it is. This movie was 2 hours, like 4 minutes. Nothing after the credits, by the way. There's a mid-credit thing, but it's immediate. Like, it's ending, Warcraft logo, scene. Okay. They're clearly wanting a franchise, and as I addressed on Box Officer, which went up this morning, this movie has made $300 million internationally already. 25 of that is domestic. The movie cost 160. We're getting sequels, but more accurately, China's getting sequels and stuff like that. And there's even Chinese production companies in the movie. And there's actually about 4 or 5 in the second Turtles movie as well. That's the next one I'm going to shoot here in a second. But this movie did well. We're gonna get more, no problem there. It was called Warcraft: The Beginning in some international markets, for crying out loud. I feel this movie at 2 hours and 4 minutes should have been 3. At the same time, probably could have been an hour and 30. Here's what I mean. This movie is trying to tell you so much. And with Warcraft, they have a lot of lore. Like I said, it's like Lord of the Rings, Hobbit, Silmarillion. It's all this stuff. We're going to tell a story. And the story they were telling, it felt like it was stretched a bit to fill 2 hours with what they had. And yet, there was so much there for what they were kind of doing and hinting at and working toward. And I guess it's a fault of knowing where it's going. Not that I know where it's going, but I know that it does go on. It felt like they could have put more into this and actually gotten a little more out of it, like a Kingdom of Heaven style 3 hours, or even 2.5. It would have benefited because it felt truncated in its own way. But for the core part of what they were doing, they could have pulled bits out of it instead and made it a really nice, concise hour and 30, hour and 40. Okay? So that's the weird angle. Like, it wasn't that there was too much, but it also wasn't that there was too little. It's kind of both. Like, it compromised weirdly in that 2 hour point. Excuse me. Overall, absolutely watch it. I mean, it's crazy awesome fights. I'm going to pick up the Blu-ray. I pick up most. The only ones I don't get are things like Fantastic Four and that. But the movie is a lot of fun when it does stuff right. It's very run-of-the-mill, and as I said, in some certain ways, it reminds me of The Punisher, in that the Punisher comic character was a movie trope of all these 70s hard-boiled vigilantes brought into comics, which didn't have that. And then when the movies were coming out, they took that character and just put him back, but that character in movies is a dime a dozen, so it didn't stand out. It's like, and? He's got a skull on his chest. What's their point? Especially when they weren't crossing over with anything at that point. It was just a vigilante dude. Movies have those. So it needed something like Punisher Warzone to really stand out and embrace the comic book over-the-topness of that, and there you go. With Warcraft, it really felt like very run-of-the-mill generic stuff, and that can be done well, and we don't get that a lot in movies. Like, think of pure fantasy movies, and when you get outside of Lord of the Rings and Conan, you're already getting into things like Scorpion King, which is a little more like Arabic desert style, or you're going into stuff that's completely gone out of my head, Seventh Son, or things like that, where it's more, that's more of like a full-on like magic, sorcerer kind of thing. And that's how few just straight up fantasy world movies there are. This is one. So it actually succeeds in a way of just being full-on fantasy and embracing it and enjoying it. So that's good. And yet, at the same time, it kind of is just by the numbers and run-of-the-mill. That's fine, because it doesn't fail at any of it as far as I'm concerned. It just kind of is what it is, and there's nothing overly noteworthy, aside from the fact, holy crap, look at those orcs. And the battle scenes don't hold back. Like, the armor's great, it looks awesome, the fighting is fun, there's some good stuff, there's some funny stuff. It doesn't take itself too seriously, but it is basically a kingdom dealing with the potential end of the world. So there is the seriousness involved there as well. So absolutely see it. I do recommend that one by far. Per usual. I mean, this isn't a Batman, Superman situation or a Fantastic Four situation where people are just saying it's 9%, it's the worst movie ever for Fantastic Four. When at the same time, Point Break remake got a 7% Rotten Tomatoes and did not get savaged even remotely close. It was just cool to hate on it. And it had problems, but it was more just very there. That movie didn't really fail in any specific way that was train wreck worthy. At the same time, Batman Superman got savaged because it was, I mean, I spent 50 minutes talking about it. It's train wreck worthy, but it still had stuff fun in there. It wasn't outright offensive, and I have friends that will actually argue me on that point. They were offended by it, but whatever. This is not the absolute horrendous train wreck people are saying, and maybe it's because I don't know the lore, where I'm sitting here getting the origin of the origin of the origin when I know there's good stories 30 years down the line. And admittedly, that's why I don't care for some superhero movies like Spider-Man or X-Men in some ways, because I know the story. Move on. Let's get to the fun stuff, which is usually the first sequel. Maybe that's the problem here, but not knowing the story as well, hey, it worked for me. So I do recommend it, absolutely. It is not the train wreck people are saying. I do want to start actually putting a score on these. So I don't want to do letters, because Chris Duckman's doing that. I really like his stuff. I am kind of wanting to do more akin to those, and we may see what could come from that. But as far as for what we've got here, we have a 6, and I need to be careful with reviews because I'm really generous with 8s. That's why I don't like scores. A 5 is very run-of-the-mill, normal. Like, when it starts getting down to like a 4, you're getting angry at it. And I never got angry at it at all. A 5 is just, I have no reservations either way toward it. This is a 6. A 7 seems high, so maybe a 6.5. We'll go with that. And that's, at the same time, should not be a avoid type review. Not whatsoever. It's absolutely worth seeing for those goddamn works. They're great. And the music is fun too. It's Ramin Djawadi, one of his lower scores. It's very competent, but I digress. I can keep going on this for a bit. It is a fun movie. Absolutely recommended. Stay tuned. I'm about to record the other one for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Out of the Shadows. Stay tuned.